Sunrise Extra on a Thursday, and we have a couple of special guests joining Brenda and I for Extra today. Mayors-elect of Beaverton, Lacey Beatty, and Joe Buck, Mayor-elect of Lake Oswego. Congratulations, both of you, on your election wins. Was that last week?
Doesn't it feel like an eternity?
Is crazy.
It's like every day is in dog years these days.
Exactly. So we're going to be talking about, what is it like, running a campaign for local office during a pandemic, each of your cities going through changes like we all are, and kind of what your hopes are for Beaverton and Lake Oswego. So I'd love to start with both of you answering, and Lacey, you can start there. You're on the left. What was it like kind of running for office during a pandemic? You can't do the normal campaign, talks and shaking of hands and knocking on doors and all that stuff that you normally would be able to do. Oh, did she freeze up?
I think she did.
What about Joe? Is his signal okay right now? Oh no! Brenda, we might have lost both of them. We'll try and get them back.
Yes, technology. Beaverton and Lake Oswego, not the only mayor's race.
Are you paused, Joe?
There they are.
No,
there you are. Can you hear us, you guys?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, I don't know what happened. Glitch.
It's okay.
It's the perfect example, yeah.
Exactly. That just totally is exactly what it's like to campaign during a global pandemic.
Thank you for that really just perfect illustration. Lacey, can you talk a little bit about that, some of the challenges that you faced and how you overcame them?
Well, I started campaigning. I launched my campaign last year on Veterans Day weekend. As a veteran, that weekend was really important to my family and I, and so that's when we chose. And we started hitting the ground running. I got to 9,000 doors before COVID, and so we were on a trend to hit over 15,000 doors knocking and talking to voters. Obviously, COVID changed the direction of our campaign really rapidly, like everyone else. There's no game plan. There's no consultant on the planet that can help you make a campaign plan during a global pandemic. And so we adjusted the best that we could, and we got into the runoff, which was really important for a three-way race, and all three had been elected in our primary. And so this summer and early fall, what we focused on was phone calls. Hundreds of phone calls. I sat in my office every day. I have a 3-year-old toddler. She would run in and out. She'd be screaming in the background. So we called thousands and thousands of people. And every time someone would pick up the phone, they go, "Are you really her? Are you really running?" Trying to find younger voters on the phone is way more challenging.
They don't answer. It's text, huh?
Yeah, so I would text, and I texted a lot of people from my personal phone to have that conversation, and sometimes it would be the rude text message to start, and I'd be like, "No, I'm not really a robot, let's have a conversation." And so, we kind of did both phone calls, and we did a lot of mailing, handwritten postcards, kind of went old school for some people as well, and we just did everything humanly possible.
Lacey, that's crazy. I don't think I've ever heard of a candidate using their personal cell phone to reach out to voters. Am I just behind the curve, or are you the first?
No, well, I'm sure I'm not the first. Local office is so vastly different than other levels of government, right? I'm in the community. People stop me at the grocery store. They stop me in the park. My child is internet famous. More people know me as Ayla's mom than anything else. And so when we're in the park and rec building, they want to take photos with her. And I mean, I guess that's every parent's dream. One day we'll all be working for her. But that accessibility piece of local government is the most important, and people want to feel heard. They want to feel seen, and making that connection to people is one of the reasons why I won.
So Joe, what were some of your tactics during the pandemic? And first of all, it says, you know, you're a local restaurant owner. What restaurant do you own or did you own in Lake Oswego?
I own 3 restaurants here in Lake Oswego. Gubanks is my family's restaurant that my grandparents opened back in the 70s. Yeah. And then I own Babica Hen Cafe and Lola's Cafe Bar that we actually just opened this past week.
Oh, wow. Well, congratulations. I've been to Gubanks several times. Okay, talk about how did you run your campaign during a pandemic? You obviously know a lot of people. A lot of people can come in the restaurant. That's a good tactic.
That's right. Well, Lacey kind of outlined the winning strategy here. My campaign, I was so proud to have a group of young student volunteers running my campaign. My campaign was staffed by recent graduates of our LO schools, and then students, some not even old enough to vote, still in high school, and some college students. And so I was so impressed with the way that these students were able to get out the vote and to think of ways to reach out to voters that I wouldn't have necessarily done. So we didn't do any door-to-door campaigning, but in terms of knocking and talking to voters, which in regular conditions would have been our main way of reaching folks. So instead, we did walk out nearly every single door, though, in Lake Oswego and left door hangers. And we also did a large amount of text banking. Mm-hmm. We started with phone banking, but we find that people really are much more responsive to the texting than the phone calls. And we were able to reach over 10,000 people on text. And then we also sent thousands of handwritten postcards that we had a whole group of volunteers writing those to their friends and neighbors. So just a real community member to community member type campaign. People explaining why this election is important.
So, Joe, recently Lake Oswego got some bad press about the lack of diversity there. One particular neighborhood had a little bit of a ruckus with a Black Lives Matter sign, and the family who posted it said, the neighbors were reacting poorly. But there were many other neighbors who came to their defense and said, no, you absolutely have a right to show that. We don't feel the same way. Can you talk about how you will address diversity in Lake Oswego and any other issues that you want to tackle as your new administration begins?
Sure. Well, the community of LO really has spoken loud and clear this election. In 2018, a city elected Daniel Nguyen, the first person of color to ever serve on the city council. He was the top vote getter in that race. And now here in 2020, we have elected Mesen Mbup, the first Black person to serve on our city council. He also was the top vote getter by a long shot in the city council race, where we elect the top 3. And I campaigned myself on a new way forward for Lake Oswego, a much more diverse, equitable, and inclusive Lake Oswego that's standing up for all folks and making sure that everyone here feels the same safety, the same peace of mind as anyone else, and a city that is rich because of its diversity, the different backgrounds and perspectives that are present here in LO. And so the voters have made it very clear, and they're changing LO with their votes with this election process. And now we're seating the youngest, most diverse city council the city's ever had. And we're going to be setting a new tone from the top and really doing the work with our diversity, equity, and inclusion. Right now, a task force, which I expect the new city council to make a permanent advisory board first thing in January.
Yeah, making it more diverse is the first step right there on the city council. Lacey, I wanted to ask you, as you now kind of take over for longtime Mayor Denny Doyle, what are you hoping to kind of change in the community of Beaverton?
It's a great question. There's so many. So a few that we're going to focus on right out of the gate is addressing climate change. We have an aspirational climate plan that doesn't really have any teeth in it, and it doesn't have any accountability worked into it. You know, being an Army veteran, we used to say all the time, you need to inspect what you expect of people. And so creating a plan is simply not good enough if there's no way for us to hold ourselves accountable. So I want to start a climate action committee right out of the gate where 50% of the membership is under the age of 30. Beaverton is a really young, really diverse community, and people don't realize that. The average age community member is 36. 1 in 3 people identify as a person of color. And so making sure that we have that representation at our decision-making tables is one of the most important things for me to do. You know, we've had a lot of community members asking us to address public safety, and I want to look at it through the lens of, do we have the right people doing the right work? And when we start to look at every aspect of policing with that question in mind, we're going to have really good outcomes and good conversations. You know, and for our community, similar to what Joe was saying, I'm the first woman mayor to serve as a mayor. Mm-hmm. We elected the first Muslim woman, Nadia Hassan, who will be sworn in January as well. We expanded our council from 6 to 7 with a charter change. And so for me as the team captain, I really need to make sure as we're onboarding new city councilors that we are coming together to address community issues. And I really see my role as the team captain to make sure that the council's priorities are being addressed. And for a long time, it's not felt that way in the city. And so working on our communication, making sure people are wrapped into what is actually happening in our community will be one of the most important things I do in the first year.
You mentioned that charter change, and it's a council manager position, and Portland, you know, is kind of looking at this of, you know, the way our city government is run. We have 5 commissioners, you know, each have an equal vote over decisions. But a lot of cities have, you know, city managers, or the mayor has much more power than other, you know, city councilors or people in that city. What is Beaverton doing with this council manager position, and how does that kind of affect you now as mayor?
So the role of the mayor is significantly shifted in what it is going forward. So we are actually today, after we get off this, we are starting the interviews for the interim city manager position. Okay. We'll hire an interim city manager that will help us transition right from January. We'll be looking for a full-time city manager. Beaverton has been operating in a strong mayor form of government since the 80s, since before I was born. And so this is a new perspective and a new way forward. For me, we intentionally made our mayor full-time, which I hope other cities will continue to look at. When we have part-time positions for elected officials, it really limits who can serve in those roles. You know, business owners that have flexible time, retired, community members are independently wealthy. But if we really talk about wanting to have elected officials that are representative of the community, we need to start moving towards those. And so I'm excited to create this mayor position for the first time. It's never existed. It's going to be a lot more political base. And if you think government is hard, trying to convince 4 out of 7 people to do something is one of the hardest things in the world to do. But it often means good policy comes out of the other end.
So, Joe, let me bring you back in, because we talked about a number of things that you hope to accomplish in Lake Oswego. It's a hefty list. But how will you actually define success? Are there rules of thumb? Are there metrics that you'll be using? What does that look like?
That's a good question. You know, I think success for me is making sure that every person on the city council has their voice heard, and each member of the council is able to really move, you know, have an impact on the community. And so those conversations I'm starting right now with the members of the council, and we do have quite a turn in our city council. There'll be, you know, 4 of us new to the council joining the 3 existing members, and so that's a big change. All at once. And I want to make sure that each member of the council is able to advance the priorities that they're hearing from members of the community, and to be as successful as possible in these years forward. So I think that just ensuring that everyone is heard, every member of the council and every member of the community, that we're expanding the seats around the table as much as we can, making sure that we're thinking outside the box, bringing in groups that the council may not have traditionally connected with, is really important.
I love, so Sunrise Extra, you guys, is viewers can chime in live with us. So they're watching us on Facebook Live and on YouTube as well. Stanford Walker, one of our regulars, wants to know, Lacey, can we disconnect photo radar for good in Beaverton? What do you think about that?
Just right with the hard questions out of the gate. Photo radar. We have, I know, and it is something the council has looked at. We actually pick, they're only in 4 intersections in the city, and we do a lot of research to figure out where they go. We're constitutionally required to do that. So we are, we go there, everyone knows where they are. So, you know, my advice to people is there's only 4. So slow down.
It's very manageable. Yes.
Right.
Oh, Stanford. He's one of our regulars. Okay, this is another hard question. I would say it's even harder. So I'm going to start with you, Joe, and then Lacey, I'd also like you to address it. This is from Jeff Lucas.
Okay, good. I was hoping you were going to read this.
Yeah,
Okay.
almost every morning. He wants to know, Joe, I'll start with you again. How will these mayors oversee the police if protesting turns into riots in their cities? So is it tear gas, accountability, arrest, prosecution? Joe, go. Take on that one. What would you do?
Welcome to elected office. Here are your issues.
You know, we heard a lot of concerns from folks about public safety. I think, you know, coming off of what we were seeing, especially in, well, mostly in Portland, and folks in the community concerned about it, you know, coming out of, you know, of that a similar scene happening in, you know, in their downtown. But the truth of the matter is that's, you know, not what happened over the summer or anytime since in Lake Oswego. Members of the community here were able to express themselves, to be out every single week, having their voices heard in a way that was peaceful and respectful of our businesses and other community members. And a lot of that's because these are community driven events, and members of the community do not want to see violent behavior. They do not want to see you know, disrespect of one another. We want to be able to bring our children to these events and have them be very safe. And a lot of that is in the safety around that is in thanks to our police department that did a great job in advance of letting people be out. The Lake Oswego Police Department wants folks to be able to express themselves, to be out in our public parks and sidewalks and in the streets, and they facilitated it. They keep their distance to make sure, of course, that, you know, that everything is safe, but they have their ear to the ground. They work with groups in the community to make sure that these are safe events. And, you know, members of the community like me, other members of the city council, leaders in the community, we're all present at these events. And when folks say, well, who are the folks that are attending, you know, with these protests, we say it's us. I mean, this is your neighbors, members of the community, people that you see every day. These are not, you know, folks coming from these are not unknown folks. We're all members of this community, and we want it to be a safe, welcoming, and inclusive place, and we'll continue to do so in the time to come.
Lacey, you go ahead and address that next.
All right. Well, photo radar to policing. So in our community, I've attended every single one of our Black Lives Matter event. The majority of them have been BIPOC led and center focused and run by students. And so what we've seen, I've taken my daughter to most of them. I walked with our Congresswoman Bonamici through one of them that was hosted at Southridge High School. What I think the big difference is for us right now is we're really taking a keen eye on listening to our community. That doesn't mean we're answering everything that they want us to answer, because we don't know, it's not a foregone conclusion, the end here. And so for us, it's really our police chief is participating with our Human Rights Advisory Commission, listening to our community that will hopefully come forward with some recommendations. From my council seat, I introduced 8 Can't Wait almost 3.5 months ago. I thought it was a meaningful first step. It wasn't picked up and voted on, but I've kept the conversations alive. I've done a lot of live Facebook events talking about public safety. As a veteran, somebody that's experienced war, somebody that's married to an active duty military officer, I find it my responsibility to ask hard questions. And I understand what it's like. Two things can be true at the same time. We can support our police officers in our community and ask hard questions about the system. It's similar to when I came home from Iraq. People had a hard time separating their feelings about the war that I had been deployed into and their support of veterans. I too was conflicted of the war I participated in, but the issue is that we can do two things at the same time. So for me, it's keeping these conversations going. We hired a consultant to come in and help us. There's a lot of things that we don't understand about how police operate, where they're operating, those kind of things. And we're going through that process of learning alongside of the community. And so keeping that forefront is really important. But I think too, we're listening to our community, we're participating, and a lot of times what we're seeing happen when it erupts into violence is when people feel unheard.
That's a great answer. I love it. Yes, two things can be true. Okay, from the super hard topic to something fun. On Sunrise, we always try and get, into different communities. Everything is so, Portland centric, and we love to talk about, all of the surrounding areas outside of the, immediate city. So I want to know from each of you, what is when you're, not working, you're with your family, you're hanging out, like what is your favorite spot or thing to do in your city? And whoever wants to start, let's just start with Joe first.
Oh gosh. Well, I'm a big runner, and what I love about Lake Oswego is a great pathway system that we have around the community. And no matter where you go in LO, there's always a hill. So you're always going up or down. And so I find that my favorite part about Lake Oswego.
Yeah, great answer. Okay, Lacey, what do you love most? Where do you go and hang out? What's your favorite spot in Beaverton?
Well, I think prior to having my toddler, it looked really different. But what most people in the community know about me is that I do Spartan races. We do a lot of obstacle course racing. We actually have an obstacle course in our own backyard. Adult monkey bars, inverted walls, those kind of things. So we have an amazing park system here in the city that has a lot of like a mini forest. We do a lot of training there, and it has an unbridled area for children to go. We call it the beast zone in the Beatty house. So we take our little tiny beast. She plays in the beast zone. We train in the environment out there that's a little bit different.
You know what? In honor of the late, great Gert Boyle from Columbia Sportswear, I am going to confer the title on you, Lacey, one tough mother.
Yeah, no kidding.
That is awesome. Real quick before we let you go, because we are getting to the end of our time, I'd like to hear, starting with Joe and then Lacey, what you think about returning civility to the political conversation.
Well, I think that it's always important to start with what we have in common, and it is true that all of us have so much more in common than we do apart, and we are folks of a different political perspective who belong to a different political party. I always think, it's always why people choose to be a member of a political party or even to not be a member of a political party. We all exist on a continuum, and there's so much more that we have in common, and especially here at the local level, we can always start with the place where we live. And we come to live, whether it's in Beaverton, whether it's in Lake Oswego, because of our love for that place. And so if we can start by what we share and appreciate all that we do have in common, and always see the best intentions in folks. If that's where we're starting the conversation from, then I think we can move forward in a way that when there are differences, we respect those differences and are able to hear perspectives hear different perspectives in a way that produces a better outcome. Know that our what I think is our way forward is not the only way. And I want to hear perspectives different than mine, more so than ones that are similar. And I think by doing that, we can, return to an environment that produces good results for the folks in the community that depend on it the most.
Lacey, we'll leave you with the last word real quick.
Got about a minute.
Sure. So for me, it's easy. The Army taught me to do two things: back up a tractor trailer and learn how to work with people that have a different opinion than you. And I think that's the reason I've been successful in local office, is the ability to reach across the aisle and bring people into the conversation. Because the majority of what we do at the local level is actually pretty boring. It's a lot of potholes, street lights. There's not a lot of room for that. But I think it's hard to get to those things when we can't get along at the dais.
Well, Lacey, thank you so much for your service. Veterans Day, lasts all this week, so thank you so much. And thank you, Joe, for joining us as well. You guys got up early for us. We really appreciate it. It's just great to kind of talk about issues, all around our community. And now people know more about Beaverton and Lake Oswego. So good luck when you guys take your seats in January. I'm sure we'll talk to you after the new year. All right, you guys. We will see you tomorrow for Sunrise Extra. Have a good Thursday.